terrific panel from across the United States to talk about the power of community action. And I just wanted to briefly introduce the panel, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about One Green Thing, and we'll just dive into our conversation. And just so you all know, the plan is to talk with the panel for about probably 30 minutes, and then we'll have an interactive conversation. One of the things that we're finding is because there's so much uh, turbulence. I'll just use that as a polite way of saying it, a turbulence in environment, sustainability, and conservation, that people are really looking for forums like this to connect, to talk about how they can make change in their community, because we know the federal government is having tremendous amount of rollbacks, and it's a very scary time if you care about these issues. So that's an important part of the conversation that we're having today. So just really quickly, our panel, we have Patrick Filbert, who is the founder and principal consultant of Post Industrial Futures based in Baltimore. And he helps communities reclaim space, history, and agency. His work focuses on research, education, capacity building, and strategic planning to support neighborhoods in post-industrial cities. Next up, we have Kathleen Leibowitz. Kathleen Leibowitz is executive director of the North Carolina nonprofit organization Towards Zero Waste. She's based in Raleigh. She's a registered dietitian with a bachelor's of science in nutrition from Appalachian State University. She worked at Rex Hospital in Raleigh, North Carolina as a clinical dietitian until she transitioned to the nonprofit sector, working as a volunteer coordinator at the Step Up organization. At the same time, her passion for sustainability was sparked by reading B. Johnson's book, Zero Waste Home. And you'll hear more about her journey shortly. Georgia Silverman Siemens is the founding director of Local Nature Lab based in New York City. She teaches environmental studies at the college level. She's also with Local Nature Lab. Georgia has bylines in urban forestry and urban greening, arboriculture. How do you say that? Georgia, you have to go off mute and tell me.
Sure, arboriculture.
Arboriculture, thank you. Arboriculture and urban forestry, the American Gardener, City Trees, popside.com, and audubon.com. Georgia is a member of BIPOC Court and Black Botanist Week and serves on the board of the New York City Bird Alliance. We love our biodiversity and our bird nerds. So welcome, Georgia. Megan Bratt Sullivan is on the board of Mass Energize and also on the operations core team. She helps the organization support local climate leaders to engage their residents and to take climate action. She assists with the monthly convening of local climate leaders and in the development of other support for communities and community leaders, as well as fundraising for Mass Energize. Megan is currently on the team organizing the second annual Mass Energize Community Climate Leaders Conference coming up on April 30th. And I'm Heather White. I'm the founder of One Green Thing and the author of several books on eco anxiety. I am thrilled to have this panel today, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about what we do at One Green Thing and why we wanted to have this conversation. At One Green Thing, our mission is to help ease eco anxiety through joyful daily action. And our idea is that this joyful daily action can help shift the culture to scale climate and policy solutions. So we realize that more and more people are looking towards what actions that they can have in their community as we're seeing all of these challenges at the federal level when it comes to the cuts at EPA, cuts at Interior, cuts at agriculture, et cetera. So that's one of our key things that we hope to achieve in today's conversation, is for you to see and hear from community leaders across the country, make connections, and know how you can also make a difference in your community. So with that, I would love for the panel to talk a little bit about their journey into sustainability. I think it's always interesting to find out how people end up where they are and doing what they're doing. So I'm going to ask folks to just share how they got started into local organizing and to make a difference. And we're going to start off with Georgia.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon from New York City. My journey actually started at home. I didn't grow up in the US. I grew up in the Caribbean until I was a tween teen. And my mother has a very green thumb, and she transformed our backyard into a place that was quite verdant. As a kid, my brother and I would be able to go outside if we were hungry and pick a fruit, whether that was a mango or a jewel plum or any other tropical fruit. And so I grew up surrounded by plants. I would say I grew up not with an awareness that there was sort of nature somewhere out there. Nature was just, it was at home, it was in the backyard. And many of my experiences have been plant-based since then. So whether it was studying community gardeners when I lived in Connecticut, later on living in Connecticut, I was a community forester. And so I worked with neighborhood groups to plant trees and sidewalks, to plant trees in residential lots that had been serially disinvested in. And that sort of plant and tree work has continued to this day. If you walk with me wherever I am, you will be going very slowly because I am always stopping to look at trees and other plants around me. My most recent foray into logo organizing, and which is how I met Heather. Last year, a colleague and I organized a series of webinars bringing together folks in biodiversity conservation and climate work to support the Harris Walls ticket. The same colleague and I are working on catalyzing um, long-term biodiversity planning in New York City. And so one was global, one was local, but I don't know, you sort of really can't, right, separate things sometimes. They do feed into each other. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Georgia. And I love when you say, if you walk with me, you'll be walking slowly. That's a big conversation in my family when we go on family hikes. But your expertise in biodiversity, your deep passion for it, I think is going to add so much to this conversation. So thank you. Next up, Megan, tell us about your journey into heat pumps, energy efficiency, and all of these exciting avenues to
Well,
create the clean energy future.
yeah, well, I think it actually begins back at like the very first Earth Day. I remember that my mother had us out and about cleaning up, picking up trash. And I have to say that my first kind of foray into this has been through recycling, just kind of an interest in that and a passion for it. And I think what happens is once you get into recycling and then you really get into recycling and you start talking about plastics and where things have come from and where they're going, you just cannot stop, right? I think of it as a great gateway to all this work that we're doing because it's very tangible for people in our communities to just get started with that. So I guess our family has always felt that way. My sister's much more passionate than myself, but I had become interested in getting more engaged in our community, and we didn't have anything going on sustainability wise. I started a group called Medfield Green Moms back when my kids were little. That has morphed into another group called Sustainable Medfield. And then from Sustainable Medfield, I actually got introduced to Mass Energize, and I've just loved my journey there. All these things have been kind of entrepreneurial, so I feel like they're scratching that itch for me to get out and create something. And with Mass Energize, as Heather pointed out, we support grassroots leaders like myself in Medfield, like across the state, so that nobody is having to start from scratch with getting their or organizations organized or started, or you need a heat pump campaign. We've got one. You want to do get that bylaw passed. We have a team that's already done that. We can point you to those kind of resources. So I think that's a good overview.
Thank you so much, Megan. And I love how you say that there's an entrepreneurial spirit for this, because I think this power of creativity and the power of creating is what is going to get us through all of the challenges that we're facing when it comes to sustainability and environment. So, creativity and community connection are such powerful forces for good. So thank you so much for talking about that, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, kind of that entrepreneurial spirit. Next up, Kathleen, could you just share with us your journey towards zero waste?
Well, mine is similar to the first two. Mothers bring you a lot of information. I would say it was my grandmother and my mother definitely were gardeners. And I remember picking raspberries on raspberry bushes when I was growing up. And then I looked this up this morning. I was raised in Michigan, and I remember at a young age that the bottle bill went into effect and how exciting that was. And I've just taken that with me for years. And I moved to North Carolina in high school. And I don't think I realized that North Carolina wasn't doing a bottle bill, but kind of got away from all that during college and then getting a career going and getting married. And I really felt disconnected and went to a book club. And it was, I think it's B. Johnson is how you say it, Zero Waste Home. And I read the book and it changed my life. And I realized that is what I had been missing. So started making changes and we moved and downsized. And then I went to a Toward Zero Waste meeting in 2019 and have been involved in the community building. And it has been wonderful.
Thank you, Kathleen. And I love that tradition of mothers and, and the intergenerational learning. I think that's something we also really need to lean into as we're navigating these turbulent times, is thinking about that wisdom and, honoring the people that came before us, but also that commitment to the future too. So thank you for sharing your journey. Next up, Patrick, tell us about what you're doing in Baltimore and how you ended up creating Post-Industrial Futures.
What's going on? Yeah. Hey, everyone. Happy to be here. So I guess I'll do a little early life story. Yeah, something I never really processed, but my story really begins with a vacant lot. I actually wrote my college essay on this, and I hadn't really thought about it until recently. So my neighborhood had one vacant lot, and looking back on it, it certainly was filled with so many invasive species. It wasn't great, but it had trees and it had stuff to play. My cousin and I would always play there growing up. That was our big experience in nature. And the traumatic event was somebody decided to actually turn this into a home. And so we came back one day and it was all wood chips and sawdust. And that was like very confusing for me. So that's how I decided I was going to go into environmental science. So I wrote that essay and got into Delaware, but I wasn't really a scientist. I had some other interests. I got very interested in urbanism, being from Baltimore and learning a little more about the city. Um, so long story short, I ended up moving to another city after college, Portland, Oregon, and I got very involved in urbanism out there and community development, working to solve their issue, which was they had too many people and they didn't know how to fit it in, and how do we make all this sustainable. Ended up coming back to Baltimore and ended up joining on with an organization called Neighborspace of Baltimore County. So interestingly enough, this is an organization based in Baltimore's inner suburbs that focuses on protecting and improving land for communities. So parks, gardens, trails, natural areas, their whole thing was about protecting the space and building community from it. So that was cool. Here I am in the environmental field, not doing so much science, but expressing, my one green thing in a very different way. But I wanted to work in the city, so I found literally the only organization doing the same thing in Baltimore, which was Baltimore Green Space. And their effort, they worked with communities to protect and assist communities across the city that had repurposed vacant land into community parks. Essentially, they have a couple urban farms they protect. They're really doing great work. But I branched off then and went back to school to get a master's in community and economic development at Penn State. So that had me thinking about everything differently. And now I have this consulting firm, Post-Industrial Futures, which partners with communities to help them build community through the process of transforming or improving vacant or underutilized land into community green space. And there is so much community building to be done in that process. So it's something I did with my last two jobs, and I'm excited. I've just got some grants to begin work with a few communities right now. So my whole thing is a teach how to fish model. So we do research, working with the community, doing the background research, figuring out what people want, what's going on. We do the education, so the workshops, the one-on-one conversations, and then we build community through the process and come together to develop a strategic plan for how best to move forward. What are the obstacles? How do we overcome them? Who helps us overcome them? What are we going to need to do? What money are we going to need to raise? The whole process. But it's really helping those community members who were here really get to hear and make that change happen. Because in Baltimore, there's so much room to do this. And I've seen so many communities really anchor themselves and improve themselves through similar projects. So that's what I'm trying to do more of.
That's so cool, Patrick. And it reminds me of what Kathleen was saying. Well, and also Megan, about the entrepreneurial spirit, this idea of
Absolutely.
how you've actually created a for-profit company to support
Yep.
community development in the nonprofit world, which is so
Yep.
cool.
Thank you.
Now I'd love to, and I love your conversation too, what you were saying about as a young person playing in that vacant lot and having that like unexpected downtime in nature, which is
Yeah.
why I'd love to just hear a little bit more from Georgia. Georgia, can you talk to us about your work with local nature lab and your work in biodiversity? One of the things that we talk a lot about at One Green Thing is, of course, eco anxiety and anxiety that young people have about the future that we're leaving them, and how downtime in nature can help increase a sense of overall well-being. It can reduce stress, and it can create that lifelong conservation ethic that we heard from Patrick, an unexpected time in vacant lot. It wasn't a beautiful park or botanical garden or even a family trip to the Grand Canyon that created that ethic with you. It was actually a nearby green space that really made that lifelong connection for you. So Georgia, if you could just share a little bit more about your work.
I'm so glad you asked this question. And just to reiterate, access and connection to the living world around us is incredibly important. And we as humans sort of intuit that without research, of which there is many to support the connections, the positive connections we have with nature. When I think of the work that Local Nature Lab does, which is a small nonprofit in New York City, I think of it as connection, love, and protection. One of our projects, and I want to say it might be my favorite, is our phenology project, where we track recurring seasonal changes in plants and animals. Mostly we're focusing on trees. And one of the assignments that I give students is to monitor a tree throughout the semester. And in yesterday's class, there was some discussion before class got underway, and one student was complaining that the tree they had chosen to monitor was not doing anything, while a good friend of theirs who chose a totally different tree, and that tree is just at peak bloom and it's amazing. And, he's just waiting for his tree to actually do something. And I've asked students to track trees for the last few years. And I have to say that the lessons that I've learned from them through this activity is really wonderful. I mean, students are excited to observe the life around them. They look forward to seeing change and growth of the life around them. They become really attached to their trees. For some students, this is the first time they have devoted dedicated time to observing a living being. And they feel that they grow in the process of watching trees change over a semester, whether that's during the spring or during the fall. I think these kinds of experiences are really important. And of course, there's a lot of research that tells us what we know intuitively. I would say that in a city like New York, where people think of New York as not having any nature, these kinds of experiences, this sort of connection is much more important than perhaps in places where people just expect, well, the Grand Canyon is nature, my state park is nature, but there's no nature in a big city, which we are trying to dispel. Uh, Another example of that would be some of the bird programming that we run, where some people are astounded at the diversity of bird life in New York City. Um, New York City supports a lot of migratory birds, and you can find them in great numbers from the smallest parks, so maybe 10 acres, to parks that are hundreds of acres, like, of course, the very popular Central Park. I think people, they are craving time with life outside of their human connections. A program that we run on Sundays, which is an eco art program that focuses on a single tree. It's a tree that's 300 years old. People in the neighborhood who have walked by this tree for very many years will say to us, "Oh, we've never noticed this tree before." This tree is at least 130 feet tall, 70 inches in diameter. But the space that we've created where we encourage people to stop and to observe, and if they'd like to, the draw, the tree, I think really helps people to pay attention, right? There's the thing about plant awareness disparity, that there are plants in our lives and we just don't see them. They're this sort of green backdrop. Um, and I think once you give people the opportunity to make that connection, that sort of one-on-one connection, it can really last a lifetime.
That sounds so much like your programming is really connected to mindfulness as much as it is about science and ecology and interconnectedness. It's this deep mindfulness that has all of these benefits. And Georgia, I really hope that you're recording meditations because your voice and your energy is so calming. I think we could all like hear your stories for hours. Kind of switching gears, but still talking about being observant and thinking more about what you buy, what you bring into your home and consumption. I'd love to hear, Kathleen, if you could talk a little bit about Towards Zero Waste, what programs that you're most proud of and have the biggest impact, and what your biggest advice is to people who are really thinking about their footprint.
Well, Towards Zero Waste, we are a small nonprofit in Wake County. We have 12 municipalities, Raleigh being the capital, the biggest municipality out of the 12. And our mission is to promote waste conscious living through education, inspiration, and action. I would say our most successful projects, we do not have any type of compost programs run by our municipalities in our state and definitely not in our county. And our most successful has been that our co-founder was very involved in the town of Cary, North Carolina, and she got the town to do a compost drop-off. And with that, it was hugely successful, and they opened a separate location. So we have two there. And then our Raleigh team was able to start a compost drop off at a farmer's market, and that has been 2 years in, and it has been hugely successful also. Those are our most impactful programs, but I'll say our new program that we just debuted a month ago is called the SHARE program, Stop Hunger and Restore Earth. It is a food recovery program in our public schools. And we've just started the pilot at 8 schools. So I'm not sure about where your children are, but when food comes through the line in public schools, a majority of it is prepackaged in plastic. So what we found was that we did a waste audit at a public school, elementary school, and 50 to 100 pounds of prepackaged food is being thrown away every day. We also have a very large food insecurity program or problem. So what we're doing is taking that food that the kids aren't eating, we accept it on a rolling cart in the cafeteria. Other kids can take it. And then if it isn't taken by the end of the day, it goes to a refrigerator in a main part of the school, and anybody can take it. There's no financial forms to fill out. At the end of the week, if it's not taken, we're donating that food to food banks. So we just got this going, and it's already been, we've got a lot of good feedback from it. And I
Kathleen,
think I
that's
didn't answer
incredible.
how to get
No,
involved, but
yeah,
I
yeah.
think,
How to get that's just incredible. And I think I want you to say how to get involved and kind of what you think as an individual your biggest impact is.
yeah,
But one of the themes that I want us all to take from this conversation is that there are eco heroes everywhere in our communities, right? And you don't have to be a presidential appointee directing the Environmental Protection Agency or working
right.
for the Natural Resources Department, although we do want people to have very fulfilling jobs and those are important jobs. You are just making this happen, Kathleen. This is so
And
incredible. And I've seen
I
people,
will
I saw
say,
Bree was like, Kathleen, this is amazing. It's amazing the impact. So tell us how to
I
get involved.
I will say to get involved is to get to know your local government. Get to know, like that's what our co-founder did. She got to know the local government officials in her town. And I've gotten to know the people in Raleigh and in the state of North Carolina to push programs that we'd like. I would say the other thing to be involved is to get to know other people who are interested in the same things. Towards Zero Waste, we're all totally volunteer run. We do not have any paid employees. And the person who developed the SHARE program, she is a mom at a school who came to us and said, let me develop this and let me do this. And I've supported her every step of the way and worked with her, but it's only really been 2 or 3 of us who've done the whole thing. You just have to work together and have a mission, and you can make it happen.
I love this idea of working together, getting to know your local folks and just making it happen, which makes me think about what Patrick is doing with communities because there's so many vacant lots I see when I'm driving anywhere, but especially in inner city Baltimore, and people can have lots of ideas, but having a good idea isn't enough. So Patrick, can you talk to us about how you take this idea of we should do something with this lot and help communities make it a reality? That would just be, and then kind of what excites you most about this work?
Oh, thank you so much. Guys, real inspiring stuff. Thank you for sharing right before this. So yeah, addressing the issue. There are a lot of vacant lots in any city all over this country. You know, we keep sprawling out and leaving lots behind. Um, so we have over 8 major American cities. This is Detroit, Baltimore, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Cleveland, and Chicago. There are 290,000 urban vacant lots. There are over 100,000 lots in Detroit alone. There are 20,000 vacant lots in Baltimore. This doesn't even include vacant housing. So there's a lot of work to be done. Now, community green space is not the one size fit all solution, but it has been done very successfully in a number of communities. And so we've seen people come in and start their own green space. Now, if you do that, you really have to do that right and work with the community from the very beginning. We've seen many efforts where they try and build something or are like, hey, you guys are going to maintain this, right? Doesn't work. So the best thing you can really do is focus on where there's clear knowledge and understanding. Focus on where there's already efforts. How do you take an effort that's already going on and get it to the next level, right? Or how do you take you meet with folks who already know about this, understand what it takes to a certain degree, or maybe done this in one area, and how do you help them take that to the next level, start up somewhere else? But really, it is an effort of building off strength. You can't just look at a vacant lot and be like, oh, let's solve that with a green space. You got to look at where is there the capacity to get started, and how do you kind of build on that capacity? Say it's one person, well, how do you go help them get 2, 3 more people, right? Say one person, maybe they know how to do the farming, right? They know the soil, but they don't know how to get the grants, or they don't know who can help get them the trees, or they don't know where there is funding available for this. And say it's someone who has all this, but they have no idea how to actually tend to the soil. So how do you build on what you already have, right? And so for me, it's a lot of how do you increase capacity, and how do you use this as a tool for developing community? How does one person turn to 10 people? How does one like okay looking lot turn into a beautiful green space? And I forget that if that was the entirety of your question, but those
Yeah,
are
that's
some.
great. That's great, Patrick, because
Yeah,
I think that's what we're all trying to do, even having this conversation. And it makes
yeah,
me think a lot about what Mass Energize is doing, across the state of Massachusetts. And Megan, this idea of how do you build capacity? How do you turn one person into 10? Would love to get your thoughts about Mass Energize, from heat pumps to water efficiency, water heaters. What's the biggest impact a consumer can make on energy efficiency? What's the biggest challenge that you've learned that people, when they're trying to make that switch? And then what program are you most excited about?
Thank you. Um, I will answer your question about what are the biggest impacts you can have. You probably all know this, but reducing your greenhouse gas emissions, we have 3 big things we try to get people to do: drive an electric vehicle, um, switch to heat pump technology that uses electricity instead of a fossil fuel, and then put solar panels on your roof. Those are like the 3 big ones. Like the biggest challenge is that those are 3 big ones, right? Those are really expensive. They require a lot of research. They take time, and maybe sometimes when they come up, you don't have a lot of time to make a decision about it. So one of the challenges we have is just trying to keep people educated on an ongoing basis, so that when it comes time to get a new car, your water heater goes, you know what direction you want to go. So that's one of our big things. We have an ongoing program we call Plug In. We're working in 7 communities with leaders on the ground, again, providing them support, social media things. We're running webinars for them, and they all publicize them in their communities, so that these 7 communities don't have to go out and get their own webinars going. We have an expert who can do it, and we build on that. And it's a little bit of a tension between wanting things to be really local and being able to provide this information, which is pretty much similar in every community, right? How you put on a solar panels, about driving an EV, but people really turn to their neighbors for advice and recommendations, and as role models, like if you see somebody doing something. So we're always trying to build on those relationships. Again, having people, not just Mass Energize doing this, but having people on the ground in those communities that are actually running the programs and seeking out testimonials, and having people who could follow up with other events and encouraging people along. So Plug-in is something we're really pleased about. Our webs, again, just our structure that gives structure, the service we have that gives structure to the different communities that we serve is great, because we provide them with a website that they couldn't develop on their own. And then we do training to keep people up to date on what's new, and also whether it's technology or like our conference is coming up, and a lot of those are about more personal skills, like how do you encourage your volunteers? How do you assess the power networks in your town, and what are you going to do? How do you triage that and figure out how you're going to make a difference? Kathleen, you mentioned, learning about how your government works and who the key players are and getting to know them. So there are a lot of things that people can learn, and people might just be interested because they've read a book, right? And now they're engaged in their communities, but they really need support they really need the support if they're going to be as effective as they can be, right? So we try and take out some of the learning, so they can do that. So I think those are the things we're most proud of. I'm really excited about the conference that's coming up. Did I answer all your?
Yes, you did, Megan.
Okay.
That is, It's really wonderful because I think a lot of people are worried, especially right now. They're worried about the future. They want to get involved in conservation or climate action, but it all seems overwhelming. And I think that another big takeaway is not only are there eco heroes everywhere, but if you start to explore in your community, you're going to have resources like Mass Energize, not everywhere, not necessarily in Bozeman, Montana, but you'd be surprised. There are groups of citizens gathering to try to help you make these changes. And I think that's super powerful. I just have a couple full panel questions, kind of lightning round, and then we're going to open it up for conversation. So, lightning round conversations, and these are big questions. Okay. So, I know like we could probably spend 8 hours on every question I'm going to ask you. So, big questions. And this is an important one because, as you all know, I'm talking around the country about eco anxiety. I talk about environmental action. I talk about what are your unique gifts and service and how do you show up for the people you love? How can you get involved? It's almost like coaching that I do intergenerationally, but more and more young people are reaching out saying, hey, can we talk? Their biggest question is I want to get involved in sustainability in the future, but I'm looking at just these massive cuts at the federal level and natural resources and environmental protection. I'm looking at all of these rollbacks. What is the job? I'm looking at the economy. What is the job market going to look like for someone like me? Maybe I just graduated from college. Maybe I'm thinking about, I've always wanted to be a park ranger and I'm not sure if that job will even be there. What advice do you have to young people who are interested in these types of jobs in sustainability? So we'll go to Georgia first.
Hmm. It is a big question, and I just think about how ruptured everything feels right now. I would say, though, that going local can be really fruitful. So states and municipalities are still investing in people and the planet. They are kind of, if you will, sort of stepping up because of these increasing gaps at the federal level. So I think looking at state and local government will be really important. Um, Looking for nonprofits that haven't shied away from their commitments. And I know philanthropists are also stepping up in terms of their support of nonprofits. So that's another place to look. Um, and I would say realistically, right? I mean, it's a tight job market. And maybe you won't right now find that dream job in the sustainability field. So maybe you pivot and find a job to support yourself. And on the side, you can start your own thing with the skills that you have so that when the economy becomes more amenable to hiring in conservation and environment and sustainability, et cetera, you will have maintained your skills. Maybe you will take that side thing into the next big thing.
I think that's such good advice. And I just see that, Emily posted in the chat, ruptured is such an accurate description of what we are feeling. So many of us are feeling. I also think you talked about creativity, Georgia, and the creativity that you needed. If you can't get the job that you want, then you're going to have to be creative and think outside the box. Megan, what's your advice to young people who want to do this type of work?
So Georgia, you led me right to this, and that is that maybe it's not a career in sustainability, but maybe you can bring sustainability to your career, right? Maybe you have to take a job that isn't your ideal path, but you can start to introduce topics and, procedures and just give information to people that wouldn't automatically be, looking for that. Like it could just be like, I think that's really where we should be headed, right? Sustainability isn't a thing. It's incorporated into everything that we do. So whether it's, you know, so I'll leave it at that, but bringing things like the Eco Challenge to an organization could be really interesting. That's a 1 month, it's like the month of April, an Earth Month activity that you can do as a team. Even something as simple as introducing that could be helpful. And then I agree with Georgia also that be sure to nurture your soul in the sustainability topics by volunteering. Find a place that you can put that passion in.
And every job is a climate job. Every job is a sustainability job, no matter what you're doing. I think that's great advice. Kathleen, how about you?
I loved what Georgia and Megan said. I've had experiences of, I'm within walking distance of NC State, so we take NC State interns. And I'm going to say 2 or 3 of our interns who have graduated from state have gotten jobs in sustainability. But those jobs have not given them the creativity that they were able to have working for a small little nonprofit like ours. And I have gotten the feedback, well, I would come with you with an idea and you just let me run with it and do everything. And other people don't allow that. So I think it's okay to maybe have a job that you might not be in the sustainability world, but do the creative thing on the side. And you can have that, maybe bring that back into your job, as Megan was saying. But I've gotten that feedback recently, which I was like, I just let you do what you wanted to do because it sounded like a good idea. But that's what I think a lot of creative people don't like to have all the huge guidelines that a bigger sustainability job might have you have.
I love that idea that volunteering or working with a smaller nonprofit can help you really lean into your creativity and solve problems faster, even. Patrick, what's your advice?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's so many things you can do, and I think we have to be careful with the grass is greener route. I mean, you could have a job outside the sustainability field and love it. It's true to you. You're building skills that are transferable. First off, when you talk about any sustainability jobs or any small nonprofits, like you have operations managers, you have all these types of jobs that you're able to be a part of it, but it's not, it's not exactly sustainability. You can build those skills anywhere. So one, go build your skills. Whatever you need to do, build your skills. So much is transferable. Then read, involve yourself, volunteer. There's so many ways to get that fuller picture and build yourself up as an environmentalist. If you want to just keep doing what you do, maybe that's enough. Or if you want to pivot later. And guys, we can't be glorifying the small nonprofit field. These are generally low-paying jobs. They're long hours. People burn out of them very fast. Trust me, like it's not a paradise. There are trade-offs. You could have a job that burns you out less. You make better money. You volunteer on the side. You get to work with the small nonprofits. You're doing your part. And guys, there's so many great, like what I talked about, community gardens, green spaces, urban farms. There's so many local trails. There's so many cool ways to be involved environmentally in your community. And so, all right, we have the federal cuts. All right, we'll keep working on this. And the new administration isn't doing that great. So, 2 years, 4 years, situation's gonna be different. You gotta believe that. So um, all hope is not lost. There's so many ways for you to push forward as an environmentalist and help out and keep true to what you care about. So those are my
Well,
thoughts.
that's great, Patrick. I love how you say all hope is not lost because a lot of people, especially young people, are feeling that it is lost. Ruptured is what Georgia said. I mean, these are, it's a serious change in
Yep,
not just the status quo, but how our institutions work to protect clean air, clean water, public lands, biodiversity,
absolutely.
clean energy, all these issues that we care about. And so here's my final question for the panel, and then we're going to pivot to questions. This is another big one, but it's an important one. We've seen this incredible disruption, rupture, uh, challenge, chaos, intentional chaos, concerns about authoritarianism, concerns about what is the future going to look like with this current administration. People are really worried. And the question is, how does local action make a difference globally? And seriously, we named this panel with the tag that we've all heard, right? Think globally, act locally, but does it make a difference? So with that, I'm going to go to Georgia. Local action doesn't make a difference.
Um, Absolutely. We all live locally, um, and the decisions that we make on a local level sort of ripple out, right? The type of energy we choose to use, our zoning and land use at the local level actually has implications for municipalities around us. What happens at home affects not just where we are, but places far away. I think about waste, and there are folks on this call who really focused on waste. A lot of wealthy cities export their waste to vulnerable and economically struggling communities and communities of color. That's a local decision that has bigger impacts than the footprint of the city. You could look at a country level where the US was exporting its plastic waste to other countries. Some countries have now refused that, but the waste is still going somewhere. So every decision starts at a point on the map and can ripple out. And I think if you think sort of more politically in the US, local action has changed an incredible amount of, I mean, all kinds of rights have been secured through local action. And within the last 5 years, we've seen great examples of that. And I can't act on a planetary scale. I am one person, but I can act locally with others to sort of create that ripple effect that people talk about.
Beautifully said. Megan, anything you want to add? Oh, you're on mute, Megan. If you
I
can,
know.
yeah. There.
5 years in is still a rookie mistake.
Oh, don't worry, I've been there.
I just want to say that, right, we have federal policies about and tax rebates and incentives and what's happening with the utilities, and that all happens at a very high level. But in a place like Medfield, where I live, the 80% of the carbon emissions generated in the town come from residents, their homes and their cars. So those are definitely local decisions. And the more people that, take them, are educated about them, take them, that's also creating demand for those products, whether it's a solar panel or a car, that sort of thing. So it's definitely local. And again, it's the building the community of people who care and who are talking about this and sharing with their neighbors about why it's important and encouraging them to also take those steps. So very local.
And creating that culture shift is so key. Kathleen.
I'm going to kind of go in a different direction from this, is that with the upheaval and all the news since January, I think what has helped my mental health and the people around me is giving locally, is getting involved. And with the share program, we had to have all the supplies delivered to my house because we don't have an office for Toward Zero Waste. So I had refrigerators and carts and all this in my house, and we spent a day putting them all together. And I looked at the other volunteer and I said, this is what I need to do, not to get all the negativity in this world. I need to continue to give at this local level because that I can't let everybody else bring me down what's going on. So I just think getting involved locally is important.
I love that. Patrick.
I think you guys are dead on. This is why we're all here, right? And I'm gonna reach back to the JFK. Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country, right? So, our federal government is dropping the ball in many ways, but I mean, should we count for our federal government to do it all? No, we have to step up. Each and every one of us has to partake to build the society we want to make. Guys, so we really have to put our best foot out there, and there's so many ways to get involved. And I think a lot about, Heather's One Green Thing is we think we're supposed to be involved in one way, but if that's not working, it's probably not the way we really want to be involved. And so each of us has an opportunity to give back in our society, and there are so many ways here locally that we can participate and find meaning and be a part of a community and help strengthen the ties. And you know because we can hope for a change in federal government, but at the end of the day what we can do there is we can go vote. So there's not a vote for another couple of years. What we can really do is step up and meet your neighbors, meet people out, and really give back in the way that you can give back. And you will find yourself fulfilled through that. And the more you build on the local level, the more you build connections, the less you're going to be thinking about what's happening up there, because it's really about, I think back to Georgia, who keeps focusing on the trees in front of her, focusing on what's right in front of you, and you'll see so many good things to get you out of bed every day. That's what I think. So,
I think that's so important, Patrick. This idea that, we have to all find our place and look at what's in front of you. And also, community can be forums like this. We're trying to create a
yeah.
community at One Green Thing where people can share their stories, share best practices. Don't give up hope. It's also international because I know that we have Ron here from Canada, and I just want you to know Canadians still will show up for a webinar, even despite the geopolitical drama that we're hearing. I'm mindful of everyone's time. So what we're going to do right now is I'm going to ask everybody on the panel if you could just put how to find you in the chat so everybody knows how they can stay in touch with Post Industrial Futures, Mass Energized, Local Nature Lab, and Towards Zero Waste. I think that would be great. Please follow these great organizations. They're wonderful resources. Kathleen, when you were saying I have supplies delivered to my home, I think everybody on this call, I know Audria, for example, is a Great Lakes ambassador and works with the Great Lakes. We've all volunteered, we've all worked, we've had stuff delivered to our home, we've made posters, we've shown up to testify, but we need to keep energizing each other. And so that's why I'm so excited that you're all here. What I will do now is I'm going to stop recording and then we'll just open it up for questions. I know we only have 5 minutes officially for the conversation. I think we can probably, if the panelists have to go, but I think we can stay for another 10 minutes if folks have questions, because I think we're all excited and invested in building community. So I want to thank everybody for joining us.